Hello. I was meaning to read this letter out loud, just to make it a little easier anyone who wanted to access it. But I just finished recording one about Quaid too. And so that, if you want to watch that too, kind of pertains to this, because I think that Jeremy might actually be disintegrated or not integrated with himself, not powdered or something, um, in a more meaningful way than I was able to explain before. So yeah, I'll just read this letter, and if you want to watch that other video, go ahead. Hello. I've been meaning to write this ever since I got spooked at the way he was describing your guy's eldest, Creo, I think is his name, shut down lack of speaking and how he didn't understand it. I felt like maybe I did, as it seemed all too familiar. I'll be sending this letter to about 9 other people. I'll start this very bluntly by saying I believe Jeremy to be a covert narcissist. The way he talks negatively about his parents, the way he complains about your not cleaning his truck thoroughly enough, the way he would charge to the break room to externally regulate on his employees. The way it seemed he was driving Brody into an antagonized, dysfunctional state. The way he would be trying to chew into Quaid until Quaid would deflect onto me and Jeremy would suddenly cheer up. The way he seemed insulted if anyone showed competence that he felt one-upped him. The way he'd throw racially belittling on Baby. The way he would pick on Ben for wanting people to wash their hands before touching his food. The way he would criticize his own children for not providing him with enough of their energy. Realizing the way he treated me was almost last on the list. I think that's why I recognized what may have actually been being said about his boy. My mother was the same. I didn't understand until very recently, but she felt herself in competition with her children. I think this stuff comes from feeling less than in some way during childhood and the hard pivot into turning everything into a game to be won against every being encountered through their development. A game they can't seem to put down once it comes to personal relationship or parenting. I understand social environment and school can have a lot to do with it, and that most people who act this way do so to some degree. Outside of their conscious awareness, it just becomes a way of being. I think this is why they get so furious or defensive if you start to question it. They think you're attacking themselves because they see no separation between the procedures and who they are as a being. This may come from the enoughness they get from winning their social games. This ends up being a script and procedure that they then train into the people around them, getting them to subscribe to and play along, not only for personal power through them as puppets or minions, but also so they don't have to feel like a bad thing if everyone else around them is playing along to a similar game. That's why anyone who won't align or succumb to the conditioning gets viewed as an enemy, to be broken down, won against, or devalued out of social credibility or esteem. I think this is why he took it so hard around February when I had a chat with him about living up to being the guy he was trying to act as though he was. That keeping promises has a lot to do with actually being the face you're trying to show. In my mind, real feedback was a way to support him toward that goal. He thought I was being mean to him. I was, quite literally, trying to help with his development. I did not understand narcissism or the import of ego relative to it yet. If anything I've said so far sounds outlandish to you, please just type narcissism into YouTube and see what comes up. In 2019, during COVID, many of the psychologists took the platform and started supplying free resources. Part of it was a lack of access caused by the lockdown. Another was a sudden rise in domestic abuse. Without their normal social systems to regulate on, many narcissists started taking things out on their families, often in escalating and violent ways. When this stuff is known and understood by the people around them, it doesn't have to have the same power for harm. It is only when it stays covert that the beings around them stay confused, that it does the kind of debilitating damage I, and many of the people I've known and mentioned, suffer. I was so confused by that man. For the first couple of years I knew him, all I wanted to do was figure out how to help him. It was only as I started to understand some of the things that the attacks started to get bad. It started by making fun of me in sly ways that often went over my head. I'm autistic. This only frustrated him more because I wasn't getting it, and escalated to damaging my property and opportunities for experience. Since I will be pursuing litigation regarding my mother and Harry's behavior, I will be asking what may be appropriate regarding Jeremy's as well. I have realized that since all of the foundation for these procedures has been laid in the realm of mind and for the purpose of controlling the lived realities of the beings around them, social consequences and real repercussions are likely the only communication that can or will affect change. The man is older than me only by a little. There's a much larger age gap between him and many of the beings going through that shop. That means that most of the people he has had the opportunity to affect have been in a highly suggestible stage of their development. Most men are not consolidated in their process until they reach 25. That is a huge responsibility. It has no business being viewed as opportunity for grooming, which essentially is what I've witnessed being done to many of the young men out there. Brody, Jimmer, Ben, Quaid, Blaine, all these men were in their conscious process, trying to figure things out in a real way relative to their own process, and I watched on many occasions as he knocked them back out of it. That behavior can have long-lasting effects, if not permanent effect, on the being whose soul he has touched, all for the sake of feeling enough himself. That's not just juvenile, it's abuse. You cannot have a mentor mind like that with that much influence without accountability. The first time I was introduced to the concept of the term narcissist was in 2016, I think, when I read an article about the damage that can be done through narcissistic parenting and the damage that can be sustained through time to development. The first time I spoke about it, though, I was 9. It was in reference to the behavior my cousin Kendi was showing that was being taught into her by her mother. Sorry. These systems don't come out of nowhere. The reason I'm writing this letter is because of the reach and influence that man has to affect the development of not only his family, but every being that runs through that shop. I quit in 2021 because of what seemed like deliberate power-tripping, disrespectful treatment of boundaries. I still didn't have comprehension enough to explain what he'd been doing. That would come later. I just understood that he was driving me out of my mind. I didn't realize how deliberately. I'm sorry this isn't the best letter. I'm very tired. This process has used me up in a way I can't even explain. But I know it needed to get written. Hope it helps in some way. Take care. Really, Maureen. At the end of this letter, maybe I'll tack on the last statement I said on my own Facebook, because I do think it pertains. This will be my last comment on consciousness for a bit, I think. The use and abuse of normal substances, like coffee and tea, can have damaging effects in much broader ways than most of us are or can be fully aware of due to their cultural prevalence. I'm not sure most of us actually understand normal human functioning. DMT is endogenous in all plants and animals. Caffeine contains an MAOI inhibitor. When it is overused without allowing the system appropriate time for reset, a being can, quite literally, lose consciousness even while awake. Their power for comprehension. I believe this was why my mother would juice us the way she did, to break us down to her very drained level. When you run out of the fuel that is needed for real awareness, you can lose capacity while still having all the adrenal structures of the eagle shell and face, like an idol or effigy with nothing inside. Could this be where narcissistic behavior stems from? Still wanting to be the face, even when you run your own bottle dry, and instead of coming to comprehension of the system and working to resolve the deficit, clicking into fight, conquest, survival mode relative to the other beings you are supposed to be sharing space with? This seems like the closest to a real solution I've figured out so far. And the reason I added that is the video that I just took on Quaid was talking about potential dissociative identity disorder. And the reason why I mentioned that was I had mentioned to Blaine that in autism, you can actually build separate organelles for the different parts of yourself, but also relative to other people in your brain. And they're actual, like, measurable structures, like physical aggregations of cells. If you're doing that to a piece of yourself, while also telling yourself that that part is a bad thing, could you not be giving yourself a tumor if that part is never allowed to, like, sort of like how they used to lobotomize people, and then that part of your cortex was now silent, right? It couldn't express, it couldn't communicate with the rest of the brain anymore. I believe that this whole idea of telling yourself that there's a part of you that's just getting you into trouble, or that's, too squishy, too whatever, could lead to an immune response, which is what I believe autism to be, that ends up being like you send your own cells after parts of yourself to then destroy or demolish, right? Seems pertinent. I don't know. I think this is my last video and or letter.